In the still of the night, I think of you. My heart beats with every thought of you.
The next couple of weeks, Mma's feet hardly touched the ground. She was walking on air and so happy. Most people who thought she had a death wish before found it difficult to understand what was happening to her. Helen walked in as she was musing to herself. "Okay, out with it," Helen said. "Out with what?" Mma asked, pretending ignorance. "You are smiling to yourself again. Only two things could make me do that. If I'm dating Chuck Obiokoha or Jesse Momoa. So you have a thing for Chuck. The guy is too cute for his own good. And I find footballers sexy. Didn't know football is such a sexy sport." "Don't change the subject. Let's just say I'm happy with the way things are now in my life. Most of us are happy with our lives too, but that dreamy look and smiling at nothing is way beyond it. So is it Prince Charming? Let's say I'm happy with us. Oh, Mma, isn't it wonderful that of all the women in the world, he chose you? Makes me wonder about his ex Angela." Mma had forgotten about the other girl. It was like she disappeared from the face of the earth. "There goes my big mouth. Didn't you know about her?" "Of course I do. I was just wondering what happened to her." "Simple. Uche dumped her for you." Mma laughed at Helen's enthusiasm. The girl was full of energy. "So back to you. I think I could help with Chuck. Why do you think I'm in full support of Prince Charming? Now that my friend is dating his brother, I know she could introduce me to him. I will if you finish the orders I gave you in a record time." "Deal." Helen agreed and quickly rushed away to start. Mma smiled happily at Helen. The girl was a bundle of excitement, and it dawned on Mma that she knew next to nothing about the girl. How could one be such a talkative and yet say nothing about her own background? Tessie opened the door to her husband's office and smiled at him. "Just what I needed in the middle of the afternoon, my sexy wife. I came to see Mma. You said she has been walking around with a long face. Too late, she's glowing these days." "Really? Is the transformation not sudden?" "Not exactly. Must be the billionaire," Phyllis replied, frowning. "If he could do that to her, that means—" She smiled at her husband. "Now that is a story I'll be hearing from Mma." Tessie turned to go. As she left, Phyllis sighed and wondered why women were always excited about romance. He shouldn't complain much because if his wife wasn't an incurable romantic, their marriage might not have lasted. Neither would it be as happy as it was. Okay, he would admit Mma was different these days. She was indeed happy. Then a nagging thought hit him. Nothing would hurt Mma more than the secret he harbored in his heart. It wasn't Uche who could break her heart. It was he, Phyllis, a man she loved and trusted with all her heart. It was high time they told her. So he placed a call to her, the only other woman who knew. Tessie slowed down as she neared Mma's office. She could remember the first time she had met the girl. Mma had been full of resentment for her then. She didn't get angry with a 16-year-old who had a crush on her fiancé. She would never forget the occasion that marked the beginning of their friendship. It was the first time she found out that her father was terminally ill and had very little time to live. She had come to look for Phyllis as was her habit, to be consoled by him, but instead she had met Phyllis's wife. Tessie smiled and moved on. On that fateful day, as she opened the door for Mma, she could see the pain on her face. And suddenly the pain changed to disappointment and then resentment. Mma had turned to go without another word, but she had called her back and asked her to wait for Phyllis, who went to a nearby grocery shop. Tessie got her into small talks, which led to her spilling her heart. She didn't know what else to do but to gather the grieving girl to her bosom and offered sisterly comfort. Tessie sighed and opened the door that led to Mma's studio. She found her alone, bent over her sewing machine as usual. Tessie smiled at the picture. All this whole building, was a result of one little brave girl who was determined to make a difference in a world where wrong was right and right was wrong. She didn't know how long she stood there watching and admiring her. Mma felt she was no longer alone and looked up, and she saw Tessie watching with a motherly look. Mma felt something touch her heart. Hey, you're not planning on standing there all day? Tessie realized she had been seen and smiled. I could. It gives me a proud and beautiful feeling looking at you and all you have achieved. Mma stood up and gave her a hug. She remained in Tessie's arms, trying to control her emotions. Tessie was closest person to a mother she had, since she could not recall her own mother and her father had destroyed all her memory right after she left. You know that you and Phyllis are very much part of this success and achievements. I can't separate one from the other. You could say all that and I will keep wondering what I ever did to become a part of this whole thing. Tessie, you love me. I see it in your eyes. You are like the mother I never knew, and I find myself working hard not to disappoint you, just like a good daughter would. I think I'm going to cry. She quickly brought out her handkerchief and wiped the tears already gathered in her eyes. Mma embraced her again. That was exactly how Helen found them when she entered. Oh, this makes me want to cry, Helen exclaimed, and the other two women burst into laughter. Come along then, Tessie invited. We seem to have free tears going round. I know I said in a record time, Helen, but this is way too fast. If this was any evidence of how much you want the man. What man? Tessie's eyes were already gleaming. I wouldn't know. The only person who seemed to have gone loony over a man is Mma. Oh please, you girls shouldn't keep me in suspense. Helen seemed to have a thing for Chuck, and Chuck happens to be Uche's brother. She would introduce us if I be a good girl and finish my work in a record time. But she broke the record, so much for love. Hate to disappoint, but I'm only here to ask what is to be done with this. She raised the fabric. Like you don't want the man anymore? Tessie laughed. Well, what would a rich, handsome international star ever see in me? Mma rolled her eyes heavenwards. You don't say a thing like that to Tessie. She's an incurable romantic. Tessie laughed. True love doesn't recognize status, sweetie. You just have to have faith in what you feel in your heart, that it will grow, and one day, if you are meant to be, he would feel its warmth and return it. That's a mouthful, Mma smiled. I'm very wise, thanks, Helen said. And you smart mouth. I was told you went from someone who had a death wish to someone who couldn't be more content with her life. It is called mood swing, very common with creative people. So why do I see Uche Okoha written all over you? I am waiting to hear all the pleasant details from you. Mma sat down and heaved a contented sigh. A dreamy look lighted up her face. She was lost in beautiful memories. What can I say? He is every woman's dream come true. He makes me feel like I'm the only woman in the whole world. She laughed. Now you can't expect me to tell you all the details. What was it like the first time he kissed you? Tessie asked dreamily. Helen giggled with excitement. First kiss is supposed to be special, isn't it? My dear, when I was dating, I made it a point to kiss all my dates. That was my way of knowing. When I first kissed Phyllis, I felt a kind of pleasure that was beyond description. But one thing will always stay in my mind. In that one kiss, I saw my future, and the feeling was so great that my toes curled. If a guy's kiss doesn't make your toe curl, then he's not your guy. Tessie looked at them seriously. She turned to Mma. So tell me dear, what was it like for you? He stole the first kiss. So my first thought was shock and anger. But even with that, there was this warm feeling that started from the bottom of my belly. And before I knew what I was doing, I was kissing him back like my life depended on it. My toes coiled. I could kiss him forever, Tessie. Sometimes I wonder if I'm abnormal. As far as he feels the same way, honey, then you must count yourself lucky. I should now go and break that record if I want my toes coiling anytime soon. They laughed as Helen left them. Tessie gave Mma one more hug. I am very happy for you, sweetheart. As soon as they left, Mma called Uche. She couldn't wait to hear his voice, not after her girly chat with her friends. It was like realizing how lucky she was to have him in her life. Uche picked the call at first ring and she felt her body warming at the sound of his voice. I was just about to call you. Oh, so I beat you to it? How is your day going? I swear, if Star reminds me of yet another meeting, I will fire her. The beautiful face of the woman swam into her mind and she worried a little. I am sure she means well, she replied instead. What are you doing this evening? That was why I called. I was going to cook you dinner. How tempting. But I have a social engagement tonight. I want to show you off. He had all but refused all outings that put the two of them alone together. Well, she supposed one cannot have her cake and eat it. That's fine, she replied him. I will see you soon, he said. Then he began to talk to someone else in his office. If there is yet another meeting you can cancel. I'm leaving early today. Oh, send her right in. He spoke to the phone. Sweetheart, I will be at your front door before you know it, he said and hung up. Mma held her phone in her hands. Why couldn't he just say it? Why couldn't he just tell her he loved her? She was sure he did. Patience, patience, she told herself. She smiled as she recalled he was coming early so they could spend some time together before they go out. So instead of worrying that she was not getting enough of him, she should think of how to make the little time she got with him special. Mma came out of the bathroom and wore a very simple and casual dress. She rushed to the kitchen to finish up the local fruit punch she was preparing for Uche. It was a recipe she got from Tessie. She had some wild berries Tessie's mom had brought to go with it. She wasn't sure he was going to like it, but it was something different and she wanted to be unique from the other girls he had dated before. When she finished that, she ran into the living room to play one of those soft songs he loved listening to. She was rising up after setting the music when the doorbell rang and she hurried to the door. She opened the door and there was the love of her life. He smiled at her. She threw herself at him. She drew him into the living room and he smiled at the scene. You look good. Now how do I stop my friends from ogling you? Of course I'm not going in this. I still have some time to change to my dress. Or are you in a hurry to leave? When my girl is dressed like that, with that soft song in the air, it will take 10,000 stampeding elephants, babe. She laughed. I made us some light snacks. You are the only woman I know who relishes cooking. I only relish cooking for you. She went back to the kitchen while he made himself more comfortable by pulling off his blazers. If he was in a normal relationship, they would be in her bedroom and not here with him all strung up. He appreciated the fact that she was trying hard to lighten the mood, but it was hard not to notice the sexual tension. He wanted to do more than kiss her. He wanted her in his bed, and he couldn't think straight with that kind of want. He wondered again if he wasn't mad to accept this kind of relationship. Well, it seems to be the trend for him these days. After all, he didn't sleep with Angela too. The bad boy heartbreaker falling in love with someone who wouldn't sleep with him. He caught himself and stopped. He wasn't in love with her, was he? Yes, he was, he agreed. He knew all along he would marry her. When he couldn't get her out of his mind, when one look at her gave him tender feelings, when the thought of living without her was like living without air, he should have known that he was falling in love with her. Suddenly he wanted to leave, but if he did that, she would be confused at his sudden disappearance, and it would hurt her deeply. Mma came bearing a tray which she put down gently on the table beside him. She poured him a glass of a liquid he wasn't sure he knew. "Taste and tell me what you think." He forced a smile, trying to get back some of his earlier mood. He sipped the drink, and it surprisingly tasted good, and he drank more deeply. "What's in it?" he asked as he picked up the berries and looked at them strangely. "I don't believe I've seen these berries before. They are wild berries. It has a local name, but I can't remember it now. They are nice," he murmured. Mma then noticed that something was wrong with him. He looked like he wanted nothing but to be away from her. She wondered what could have happened between the time she was getting the refreshments and then to put him in such a bad mood. "I would go get dressed now," she said and got up. She walked to the door and stopped to look at him. He was looking into space, refreshments forgotten. What could have gone wrong? She wondered, feeling anxiety seeping into her spine. "Uche, are you alright?" He looked at her. Goodness, how he loved her, he thought. Shouldn't that knowledge fill him with joy? All he could feel was confusion and anxiety. He felt like he had played into the hands of an expert. But the woman standing there looked like she had no scheming bone in her body. "I am fine," he replied. "You know I had a long day at work today. I guess it's getting to me. If you're not feeling up to it, I guess we can forget it." The exact excuse he was looking for, he thought, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. He had promised her he was going to take her out, and that he would do. It was not her fault that he couldn't come to terms with loving her. "No, I'm alright. Let's just pray you dress like the typical woman and I would catch some sleep by the time you're ready." He smiled as if to reassure her. Mma sat on her dressing stool, looking at the dress she was going to wear. Suddenly the evening was becoming a disaster, and there was nothing it seemed she could do about it. She knew how much restraint he was putting on himself when he kissed her earlier. She knew it wasn't easy on him to become celibate after years of active sex life. Was she not asking too much of him? She thought. Was the whole thing too much of a punishment for him to bear? She sighed and hoped that he would be in a better mood by the time she returned to the living room. He was half asleep by the time she entered the living room. He really looked tired, and she didn't have the heart to wake him. "Are you going to kiss me awake or not?" he murmured sleepily. She breathed a sigh of relief and smiled. "Well, you hardly need it now. You are awake already." Thank God, she prayed silently. Whatever the problem was, he had forgotten. "I am not awake yet," he told her and grabbed her by the waist. She went willingly, laughing, and gave him a noisy kiss. "If that doesn't wake you, nothing would," she laughed. He kissed her slowly. Mma could feel the warmth in her belly. She wondered if it would always feel like this when he kissed her. "Now that's more like it. I'm definitely awake now," he told her and drew her to her feet. "You look good." "I would have gone for breathtaking," she laughed. He looked at her and smiled, and that too. He led her out to the car. Tonight they had a chauffeur. "Don't want to drive when I drink." She smiled and got into the back with the chauffeur holding the door for her. Their car glided to a stop near the harbor. She turned to Uche with confusion written all over her face. "Where is this place?" "A private harbor. It belongs to one of my friends," he explained as he led her towards the plank that led to the yacht. "I thought we were going to a party." "Yes, we are. It is his engagement party, but having more money than he would ever need, he decided to buy a yacht for the party." Mma swallowed it all in awe. "Oh," was all she could manage as she crossed the plank. A doorman ushered them in. The man took her wrap and showed them into one of the most magnificent halls she had ever seen. Mma was still looking around in awe when she saw a handsome young man break out from a group and came towards them with a smile. "Hey, Uche, I wasn't sure you would make it. I'm so glad you did. Wouldn't miss seeing another die-hard bachelor shackled for life." The man laughed and pounded Uche on the back. "I am sure you would be getting shackled soon, friend." He turned to Umma and gave her a full male lusty look. "I know who you are, and have been waiting to meet you since I saw that picture of you and Uche. I am Yemi Yem." He kissed her fingers lingeringly. Uche frowned and had to rescue Umma from Yemi. "I see, shackled or not, Yemi, you will never cease being the typical bachelor." The man laughed outrightly. He turned to Umma. "He is yours for shackling. Don't waste too much time." The man led them into the hall. Umma could not keep the wonder from her face. "Nice place, huh?" Uche commented. "Nice doesn't cut it," Umma replied, smiling up at him. The hall was shimmering with lights. She let him lead her into the hall, teeming with people, and as they walked, she could feel eyes coming to rest on them. Then Umma saw Angela. The girl was looking good as usual. Angela began to walk towards them, and Umma wanted desperately to veer Uche into another direction. Then suddenly she stopped and smiled at Angela. She shouldn't be the one doing the running. "Here you are, darling. I've been looking out for you," she said to Uche, totally ignoring Umma. "Hi, Angela. You look good tonight," Uche commented. At the same time, he wondered briefly if he was not better off with Angela. At least his heart would be safe.
In the still of the night, I think of you. My heart beats with every thought of you.